everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Life Show. I'm Dr. Leslie Birkland, and I am here with your vibrational expert, Mr. Nick Brighter. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yay! I am so excited about this subject. It is on false memories. We all have false memories at one time or another. In fact, a lot of false memories. Some of them are just based on history. Time has gone by. The story has become embellished and it turns into this huge, crazy story. We may even know that we're embellishing the story. And that's always kind of fun when Grandpa's telling a story and it turns into some crazy, wild story. But then there's just basic false memories, things that are recent, things that we see, every single day, and we just aren't remembering it correctly. But I have a story.
Okay, let's hear Leslie's story. If you would please share your story with us all.
I will. Okay, so when I was about 6 years old, and my brother is about 7 or 8, we were playing in a field. It was an empty lot next to our home, and we were just out playing, and we had little sneakers on, and we just loved playing in this empty field. There was a lot of debris in the field, a lot of bushes and a lot of debris. And I stepped on a nail. There's a wood plank that had a rusty nail sticking up. And I stepped on it and it went through my flip-flop. I remember distinctly wearing some just thongs, those old kind of flip-flops. And it went through the flip-flop and it went through my foot. And I was crying and my brother carried me to the house, which is right next door. And my mom was telling me about how I had to go to the hospital. They had to check it out. I had to go find the exact nail to see if it was indeed rusty. And if so, I may have to get a tetanus shot, and it just hurt. And I don't remember much after that, but it was a really traumatic experience for me being.
And your whole family was involved?
Everyone, my mom, my dad, my brother, taking me, to the hospital. I actually don't recall if I got the shot. I in my mind, the nail had some rust on it, but I don't think that I actually got the shot. But I was traumatized just thinking about having to get the shot and this hole in my foot. And I was telling my brother, we were reminiscing, and I was telling him, remember when we were in the lot, and I, went through the whole story, and he just hesitated for a moment and he said, Leslie? I said, yes. He goes, that story is true. I went, yeah. He goes, it happened to me, not you. You were just there. In other words, my little 6-year-old mind, I was so traumatized over what happened to my brother that I took on that memory. That memory, right now, I can feel the nail in my foot. It hurts. So maybe I'm just super empathetical. I don't know. That's what I'll say.
So you had completely not remembered that your brother stepped on a nail, went to the hospital. It was so traumatic that it was happening to you.
It actually happened to me, and I remembered it so vividly that I told my brother the story. And he said, no, it happened to me. I ended up actually going to the hospital, and I did have to get the tetanus shot, but I was so traumatized over what had happened to him. I remember in detail, even now when I think about it, my foot hurts from stepping on that nail. And I know now.
Rusty nail.
So I would categorize that as a false memory.
Okay.
But even back then, growing up, I always thought that happened to me. So I took on that false memory almost immediately.
For years, you'd never mentioned it to your family because it's why
it was so traumatic.
And so when you finally did, you discovered it didn't really happen to you. I think everyone's maybe experienced to some degree where something they let's say an inside joke between you and your friends, sort of its origins, and both people believe that the origins from a different place, or that they both started that inside joke where one of those memories has to, kind of be false.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit different than what you're saying, but one of those people is sort of putting themselves in the other person's.
But that was an absolute false memory. I mean, it was.
That's funny to hear that, though.
So, Nick, you mentioned something to me about a year ago. I did not know what the Mandela effect, what that meant. And I remember asking you, what is a Mandela effect? I'm hearing about it, but I didn't have time to look it up. And you explained it to me. Can you tell me about the Mandela effect?
Yeah, the Mandela effect was a term coined by Fiona Broome, and it describes how Nelson Mandela was believed by many people to have died in prison in, I believe, the 1960s.
No, actually, it was, I think it was 1980.
1980s?
Yeah. Yeah, it was 19, because of course, now that you explained it to me, then I went and looked it up, and I think it said in 1980 he was assassinated or he died in prison.
And some versions of it, the version I first heard was that he was assassinated.
Okay.
And when I first heard of the Mandela effect, I actually still believed he was, I believed he was dead.
That he had. Okay.
And that... so it's something that was believed by many people, but it turns out that he wasn't, and then he went on to become, president or
South Africa,
whatever their leader.
Yeah, South Africa, the president of South Africa. After spending 30 or more years,
so that the people believing something else had happened is called the Mandela effect because of that's the namesake for it.
Okay. So she coined this, and so now sometimes you'll hear Mandela effect. Oh, that's a Mandela effect, especially when, that's why I asked
you. My favorite example actually is, because I know some examples we're going to go over.
Okay.
And the Monopoly Man is probably my favorite example, because I think a lot of people can relate to it. And that if I were to ask the question, does the Monopoly Man wear a monocle or not? And monocle, yeah.
He does.
Little eyepiece.
I played Monopoly a million times when I was a little kid. He has a little monocle, and he's a little guy wearing black, I think.
Right. And so a lot of people remember him in that way. Now, I don't have a Monopoly board in front of me, but for any viewers, if you go look up the Monopoly image, and you'll notice that he doesn't wear a monocle. No glasses, no monocle.
Okay.
And that's probably my favorite example of the Mandela effect, is that.
So it's masses.
Everyone I've ever asked remembers him as wearing a monocle.
Okay, so it's a phenomenon where the masses believe something. So it's not just a few people. It's everyone sort of thinks that. I know that there's, the Star Wars, one.
I actually like your, I know I first explained it to you, but you've explained it very eloquently since then.
I have?
Yeah, so.
Well, okay, the Star Wars. So, I've seen this on the news a lot. So hopefully my memory is right, that Darth Vader, everyone thinks that he said, Luke, I am your father. Everyone, you even hear people say that, Luke, I am your father. And in reality, when you play the movie back, that's not what he said at all. He just simply, what he said was, no, I am your father.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyone who's watching this, if you think he says, Luke, I am your father, he did not say that. So that would be part of the Mandela effect. Another thing may be, especially with media, since especially recently, media is a lot of commentary and it's repetitive. One news agency, another news agency, they'll repeat something over and over and over and over, and people absolutely believe it. Nick, that might actually be into your limiting beliefs section, where people believe it. They actually can envision it. They've seen it on the news, so they know that this event actually took place, whatever the event may be.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't take place at all. It did absolutely. And I'm not thinking of one specific thing. It's probably something, political, but there's certain things that just simply did not take place. It was just commentary and the repetitiveness of hearing something over and over and over. We form a picture in our memory
the
that it actually happened.
Of consensus can be strong in that where there's consensus, people often believe that whatever that thing is that there's consensus of must be true. And I would challenge that consensus is very often a bad argument for truth.
Yeah, just because a lot of people believe it doesn't mean it's true. And Nick, I would like to even add that there was a study done, I believe it was at Stanford University, not Stanford University, Stanford University, where they determined that out of everyone that in a consensus believes something, and when the truth is just put right in front of them, I mean, this is a memory that they actually believe they saw or believe they heard or believe they witnessed, or even saw just footage, on the TV, but about 70% still believe the misinformation because they can't bring themselves, even when it's right in front of them, to believe the truth. And again, that's sort of like something else we talked about foundational and limiting
This is
beliefs.
the Stanford University.
Yes, they did a study, but 70%, that is huge, huge. But I would like to get into why. Well, why do we have these? What's going on in our brains? Because most people think of our brains as a computer. It stores every single thought, every single thing.
I think I can clarify something on that study that might explain a little more. That from what I remember about the study, it's comparing information on Twitter where there's information that's both true and false, and that the false information was believed 70% of the time. And I think something to keep in mind is that the researchers were of the opinion that the novelty of the false information may have played a part, that the false stories may have been sort of more interesting, something like that. And so there's something to keep in mind. But even so, 70% is a kind of surprisingly high number.
Yeah, but it even goes further because people in their brains actually create a picture of what has happened. And so it becomes like a memory. Like I saw that event on the news where maybe they just read something on Twitter. So it just expands like, oh no, that's true. It was all over the news. It was all, we saw it. They had video footage. It was all over the news. And it simply isn't there. It was just words, let's say on Twitter. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that it was Twitter. I guess I didn't read about the study enough.
So one more Mandela effect example I know I've heard you mention is Bob Barker. What is?
Bob Barker from The Price is Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes, Bob Barker. I absolutely recall that about 10 years ago, Bob Barker passed away. And Bob, I saw it on the news. I saw his family talking about it. I saw that, how sad it was, and people writing in about Bob Barker, rest in peace, great guy, The Price is Right, on and on. I mean, he was on this game show for so many years. Well, it turns out Bob Barker's not dead. He's not. He just celebrated, a month ago or a few months ago, his 99th birthday. And that is a Mandela effect. Absolutely, Nick, because I believed it. And that really was actually all over the internet where people were saying, wait a minute, they reported that he died. We saw everything. We saw, they almost saw his funeral, where he's buried, everything.
They must have picked the wrong door.
Yeah, door number 3, he's alive. Door number 2, he's dead.
Eyewitness testimony.
Yeah. But what's interesting, I just want with the gal who did, with Fiona, Abram,
yeah.
Fiona Broom, she also sort of is into some conspiracy series. She's written a lot of books, and one of the books that she wrote is on, this is her conspiracy theory, that our minds we may have false memories because there's so many alternate or parallel universe versus the cross. So it may have happened in one universe. Now, I think that that's really going to be hard to prove, because based on parallel universes, I didn't know that all the lines crossed. But that's something that she's interested in exploring, the possibility that that's why we have false memories.
Well, I know in the vibrational space, vibration, energy level space, there's a lot of people that I would consider experts in that space and very knowledgeable. Not all of them, that believe in parallel, realities,
alternate realities, and
alternate realities, and it would be something that's hard to prove, scientifically,
right? Yeah.
Even if you proved it, in an objective sense, I mean, not so much. Even
if you proved it, you'd have to prove that the lines crossed.
Yeah, but
they intersected, and we got all confused, and our memories are completely different.
I look at it as something that it's possible.
Okay, I'll just say that's possible. Okay, so why do you think that let's just get back to reality, our reality.
Okay.
Why do you think our brains change our memories? I mean, just in general.
Why do we have false memories? If I were going to answer that question, well, it would have to do with how your brain encodes memories, and there's some theories behind it. I have some written down here. There's the idea of suggestibility. So suggestibility might be something like, if you see something happen and a person gives you, but you're maybe not 100% sure of exactly what you saw. Maybe there's a car that drove by and you can tell it's a dark color, but you're not 100% sure what color it is. And a friend thinks that, oh, did you see that red car? And maybe you remember it as red from that, or that blue car, or that black car, and you remember it as that. So suggestibility is one. There's the idea of endorsement and consensus, which I mentioned a little earlier, which that when everyone believes something, the thought that it must be true. Endorsement being that when someone that you trust has good judgment believes something, and they communicate it to you, you're going to be more likely to treat it as truth and sort of mentally store it away, especially if it's something that to you at that moment isn't vitally important to know whether it's true or not.
Okay.
You sort of mentally store it away as something that's true because you heard it from a trusted source. And then when it does become important, well, it's something that you remember in that way.
So all of a sudden it just becomes a memory. So, two people see the same things, and I describe sort of what I saw, they describe what they saw, and we consolidate. Our brains sort of fill in the blanks, and we consolidate so that we can, agree on what we saw. And I think that is kind of scary, especially when it comes with the court system and trials and eyewitnesses, which have been proven not to be as reliable, although the court system still rely on it and believe it's better than nothing. But a lot of people have been convicted, and thank goodness for DNA, because they've been in jail for, 15, 20, 30, even longer. And then with DNA, it turns out that the eyewitness that remembers seeing that person commit that crime, that did not happen at all, that their brain somehow... There's a word, I can't think of the word, that actually was where your brain will fill in gaps that you're missing when you witness.
Oh, right. Confabulation.
Okay, confabulation. So
with regard to memory, that's what that is.
Okay, so our brains will see something, we're missing some components. And so we just naturally fill
one way
it
to
in.
kind of look at that is the focus point of your vision is really narrow, and your mind sort of your mind doesn't see very clearly outside around the focus point, and it is essentially filling in all those blanks. And there's a lot more filling in going on than you think. Some interesting things to go to sort of get close to wrapping up here.
Okay.
Is I know you're in your practice, you mentioned you use the movie theater technique, which is an NLP technique.
I do.
There's a number of memory altering techniques in NLP. And what's interesting to me is that when you've done something like that yourself, on yourself, that alters your memory, you sort of get a feel for, if you haven't already experienced something in your life like this already, that your memories are a lot more moldable than you probably think they are.
They're malleable. I mean, we definitely. And what I find interesting is sometimes I will bring someone back with like, rewind therapy, and they'll remember something vividly, but then they start remembering how it really happened because, and then we, there's a whole process of especially people dealing with depression or trauma.
And we'll have to go over some techniques in a later show.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And all in all, I just want everyone to know that we are not talking about every single memory that you have. These are only like specific memories.
Your memories are false.
Yeah. I do not suggesting that everything that you remember is not true. I mean, some of them are like just trivial things, and some of them are big events that happen. But all in all, we all, we're pretty good with our memories, but we're specifically talking about false memories. And
I kind of just look at it, how I apply it to my own life is to try to be more open-minded.
Yeah, to be open-minded. But thank you everyone for listening, and hopefully you learned a little something about false memories, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.